Imagine waking up one morning and discovering that everything you have ever believed is a lie. The people you trusted, the things you saw, the ideas you grew up with, none of them were the complete truth. Would you still believe your own eyes? Over 2400 years ago, one man dared to ask this question. His name was Plato, and his ideas completely changed the way humans think about knowledge, justice, politics, education, and even reality itself. He asked questions that are still debated in universities today. What is justice? Who deserves to rule a country? Can democracy fail? Should leaders be chosen because they are popular or because they are wise? And perhaps his biggest question of all, is the world we see actually real? Today we are going to understand everything about Plato in the simplest way possible, from his life and philosophy to his famous theory of forms, justice, philosopher king, communism, democracy, women, education, censorship, criticism, and his lasting legacy. So let's travel back to ancient Greece. Plato was born around 427 BCE in the Greek city of Athens. He belonged to a wealthy and noble family, so he received an excellent education from childhood. He learned music, poetry, mathematics, gymnastics, and philosophy. Interestingly, Plato wasn't actually his birth name. His real name was Aristotle. The nickname Plato probably came from the Greek word meaning broad, either because he had broad shoulders or a broad forehead. As a young man, Plato wanted to enter politics, but before that happened, he met the person who changed his life forever, Socrates. Socrates was unlike any teacher. Instead of giving answers, he asked questions. He believed that by asking the right questions, people could discover the truth themselves. Plato became one of his closest students and admired him deeply. However, in 399 BCE, something tragic happened. The democratic government of Athens accused Socrates of corrupting young people and disrespecting the gods. He was sentenced to death. Rather than escaping, Socrates accepted the court's decision and calmly drank a cup of poison. Watching his innocent teacher die deeply shocked Plato. He began to question whether democracy was really the best form of government. After Socrates' death, Plato traveled to places like Egypt and Italy, learning from different cultures and thinkers. When he returned to Athens, he founded the Academy, one of the world's first universities. Students there studied mathematics, astronomy, philosophy, politics, and science. One of those students was Aristotle, who later became the teacher of Alexander the Great. Through Socrates, Plato, and Aristotle, one generation of teachers shaped the intellectual history of the Western world. To understand Plato, we need to understand his world. Athens was one of the greatest city-states in ancient Greece. It was famous for democracy, where citizens could participate in government, but democracy also had problems. Many leaders were chosen because they were good speakers rather than wise thinkers. Political rivalries, corruption, and wars weakened Athens. The city also suffered greatly during the Peloponnesian War against Sparta. Then came the execution of Socrates. For Plato, this was proof that a government ruled by public opinion could sometimes make terrible decisions. Instead of asking, "What do most people want?" Plato asked, "What is truly right?" This question became the foundation of all his political philosophy. Many people think Plato only wanted to design the perfect government, but that's not true. His real goal was much bigger. He wanted to discover how human beings could live the best possible life. He believed a good society cannot exist unless its citizens are good. A just state depends on just people. Good rulers come from good education. Good education creates wise minds, and wise minds creates justice. This is why philosophy and politics are closely connected in Plato's thought. Now let's come to Plato's most famous philosophical idea, the theory of forms, also called the theory of ideas. At first, this idea may sound difficult, but don't worry. Let's understand it with a simple example. Imagine three people draw a circle. One circle is big, one circle is small, one circle is slightly uneven. None of them is absolutely perfect. Yet all of us immediately recognize them as circles. But here's the question. If nobody has ever seen a perfect circle, then how do we know what a perfect circle is? Plato answered this by saying that beyond our physical world exists another world, a perfect invisible world called the world of forms. According to Plato, there are two worlds. The first is the physical world, this world we live in every day. This world is full of change. Flowers bloom and then wither. Buildings are built and eventually crumble. People are born, grow old, and die. Nothing here lasts forever. The second is the world of forms. This world is invisible, eternal, and perfect. Nothing changes there. Nothing grows old. Nothing is destroyed. Everything that exists in our physical world is only an imperfect copy of its own perfect form. For example, every beautiful flower eventually loses its beauty, but the form of beauty never changes. Every honest person may sometimes make mistakes, but the form of justice remains perfect forever. Even every chair you have ever seen is only imperfect copy of the perfect form of chair. Plato believed that the forms are more real than the physical objects around us because physical things change while forms remains eternal. Among all these forms, one is greater than every other form. Plato called it the form of the good. Just as the sun gives light that allows our eyes to see objects, the form of the good gives light to our minds, allowing us to understand truth, justice, beauty, and wisdom. Without understanding the good, no one can truly become wise. That is why Plato believed philosophy was not just about learning facts. It was a lifelong journey towards discovering the highest truth. To explain the theory of forms more clearly, Plato told one of the most famous stories in the history of philosophy, the Allegory of the Cave. Imagine a group of prisoners living inside a dark cave since the day they were born. Their hands, feet, and necks are chained. They cannot turn around. They can only look at the wall in front of them. Behind the prisoners burns a fire. Between the fire and the prisoners, people walk carrying different objects. The prisoners never see these objects. Instead, they only see the shadows cast on the wall. Since they have never seen anything else, they believe those shadows are reality itself. One day, one prisoner is finally set free. At first, the light from the fire hurts his eyes. Then he slowly walks out of the cave. The bright sunlight blinds him. Gradually, his eyes adjust. For the first time in his life, he sees trees, rivers, mountains, birds, stars, and the beautiful blue sky. He suddenly realizes that the shadows inside the cave were never real. They were only copies of real objects. Filled with excitement, he returns to the cave to tell the other prisoners the truth. But instead of believing him, They laugh at him. Some even become angry because the truth changes everything they have believed their entire life. This story has a deeper meaning. The cave represents ignorance, the chain represents false belief and lack of education, the shadow represents incomplete knowledge and appearances, the outside world represents truth and the world of forms, the sun represents the form of good, and the freed prisoner represents the philosopher, someone who discovers truth and then tries to educate society. Through this story, Plato teaches us that true education is not about memorizing information, it is about opening our minds and learning to see reality as it truly is. Once Plato explained what true knowledge is, he asked another important question. If some people understand truth better than others, then who should govern the state? His answer was clear: the philosopher king. Plato believed that most people spend their lives chasing money, fame, pleasure, or power. A philosopher is different. A philosopher loves wisdom more than wealth, truth more than popularity, justice more than personal gain. According to Plato, a true philosopher is calm, honest, intelligent, disciplined, courageous, and free from greed. Such a person does not seek power for selfish reasons. Instead, they accept leadership as a responsibility to serve society. That is why Plato famously wrote, "Until philosophers became kings, or kings become philosophers, there will be no end to the troubles of states." He believed that only someone who understands the form of the good can make decisions that benefit everyone rather than just a few people. However, becoming a philosopher king was not easy. Plato believed future rulers should spend decades studying mathematics, music, physical training, philosophy, science, and logic before they were trusted with political power. For Plato, ruling was not a privilege, it was the greatest responsibility. Now that Plato had explained who should rule, he asked another important question. What would the perfect state look like? Plato believed that a state is like the human body. Think about your own body. Your eyes see, your heart pumps blood, your brain thinks, your legs helps you walk. Every part has a different job. If one part stops doing its work, the whole body suffers. Plato believed a state works in exactly the same way. Every citizen had different talents and abilities. Instead of everyone trying to do every job, each person should perform the work they are naturally best at. This idea is called the principle of specialization or the division of labor. According to Plato, when everyone performs the duty best suited to them, society becomes peaceful, efficient, and just. To achieve this, Plato divided society into three classes: producers. This is the largest class. It includes farmers, craftsmen, traders, merchants, workers, artists, and business people. Their responsibility is to produce food, clothes, houses, and all the goods needed by the society. Second, guardians. These are the soldiers and protectors of the state. Their duty is to defend the country from enemies, maintain law and order, and protect citizens. They must be brave, disciplined, and loyal. Third, rulers or philosopher kings. This is smallest but most important class. These are the wisest people in society. They do not rule because they are rich or powerful. They rule because they possess knowledge, wisdom, and a deep understanding of justice. Plato believed that these three classes are not based on birth or family background. Instead, they are based on ability, character, and education. A poor child with exceptional wisdom could become a ruler. Similarly, a rich person's child might become a producer if that suited their abilities better. For Plato, talent mattered more than family status. Now we come to Plato's most famous political idea, justice. When most people hear the word justice, they think about courts, judges, and punishment. But Plato had a very different understanding. He believed justice is harmony. Imagine an orchestra. There are singers, drummers, and pianists. Each person plays a different instrument. If everyone tries to play the same instrument at the same time, the music becomes noise. But when every musician performs their own role at the right moment, beautiful music is created. According to Plato, society works the same. Justice exists when every person performs the duty best suited to them without interfering in the work of others. A farmer should focus on farming, a soldier should protect the state, a ruler should govern wisely. When everyone performs their own duty honestly, the entire society becomes harmonious. This famous idea is often summarized as justice means doing one's own work and not interfering with the work of others. Plato believed justice exists at two levels: justice in the individual. Every human being has three parts of the soul. The first is reason. Reason helps us think logically and make wise decisions. The second is spirit. Spirit gives us courage, determination, ambition, and self respect. The third is appetite. Appetite include our desires for food, money, comfort, luxury, and pleasure. A good person is one whose reason controls spirit and appetite. If desires become stronger than reason, people become greedy. If anger becomes stronger than reason, people become violent. Only when reason leads the other two parts does a person become truly just. Justice in the state. Plato compared the three parts of the soul to the three classes of society. Reason corresponds to the philosopher kings, spirit corresponds to the guardians, appetite corresponds to the producers. Just as reasons should guide the soul, philosopher kings should guide the state. When each class performs its own duty without interfering with others, justice is achieved. For Plato, justice was not simply about obeying laws, it was about creating harmony within both the individual and society. Plato believed that an ideal state should possess four important virtues. The first is wisdom. This belongs mainly to the rulers who make intelligent decisions for the welfare of the entire state. The second is courage. This is special quality of the guardians who protect the country with bravery. The third is temperance, also called self-control. This means everyone respects the law and understands their responsibilities. It creates harmony between all classes of society. The fourth and highest virtue is justice. Justice brings together wisdom, courage, and self control, one balanced and harmonious society. According to Plato, if these four virtues exist, the state will remain peaceful, stable. Plato believed that education is the foundation of a good society. According to him, no one is born a great ruler. A person becomes a good ruler only through years of proper education, discipline, and experience. That is why he designed one of the earliest and most detailed education systems in history. Plato believed education should begin in childhood and continue throughout life. For young children, education should include stories, music, games, and physical exercise. But Plato warned that children should hear only stories, that teach honesty, courage, kindness, and self control. He believed that what children learn at a young age shape their entire character. As children grow older, they should study mathematics, geometry, astronomy, and science. These subjects train the mind to think logically instead of emotionally. After this comes physical training, also called gymnastics. Plato believed a healthy mind needs a healthy body. Strong citizens are better prepared to protect themselves and their country. Only the most intelligent and morally upright students would continue to the highest stage of education, where they would study philosophy and dialectics. Dialectics is the art of asking questions, examining ideas, and discovering the truth through reasoning. Finally, after many years of learning and practical experience, only a few would become philosopher kings or philosopher queens. Plato believed that education should not simply prepare people for jobs, it should prepare them to become good human beings. According to him, an educated person is not someone who knows many facts, but someone who knows how to distinguish truth from falsehood and good from evil. One of Plato's most debated ideas is his concept of communism. When people hear the word communism, they often think of Karl Marx or modern communist countries. But Plato's idea was very different. First of all, Plato did not want every citizen to live under communism. His idea applied only to the ruling class, the guardians, and philosopher rulers. The producers, such as farmers, traders, and craftsmen, could own property and earn wealth. So, why did Plato want the rulers to live without private property? He believed that if rulers owned large houses, businesses, or land, they might start making decisions to increase their own wealth instead of serving the people. A ruler who is busy becoming rich cannot remain completely fair. To prevent corruption, Plato suggested that guardians should not own private property. They should live together, eat together, and share simply living arrangements. Their focus should remain on protecting and governing the state, not on becoming wealthy. Plato also proposed that the guardians should not have traditional private families. He believed that if rulers became too attached to their own wives and children, they might show favoritism. Instead of thinking about the welfare of the entire society, they might begin making decisions that benefit only their own family. Therefore, Plato suggested that among the guardian class, wives and children should be held in common, and children should be raised collectively by the state. This way, every guardian would think of all children as equally important and work only for the common good. These ideas are often called communism of property and communism of family. Today, many people criticize these proposals as unrealistic and too extreme. However, Plato's intention was not to destroy families. His goal was to eliminate greed, corruption, and favoritism among rulers so they could govern fairly. One of Plato's most revolutionary ideas was his view on women. In ancient Greece, women had very few rights. Most women were expected to stay at home and had little role in politics or public life. But Plato challenged this belief. He argued that men and women have the same capacity for learning and virtue. The only major difference, according to Plato, was physical strength. If a woman possessed wisdom, courage, discipline, and intelligence, she should receive the same education as a man. She could become a guardian, defeat the state, and if she proved to be the wisest of all, she could even become a philosopher queen. This was an extraordinary idea for his time. Plato believed that society should use the talents of every capable person, whether male or female. Although modern ideas of gender equality go much further than Plato's, his belief that women should receive equal education and have the opportunity to rule was centuries ahead of many societies. For this reason, many scholars consider Plato one of the earliest thinkers to argue for the political participation of women. Although Plato lived in Athens, the birthplace of democracy, he was one of democracy's strongest critics. But why? To understand his criticism, remember what happened to his teacher, Socrates. A democratic court sentenced one of the wisest men in Greece to death. For Plato, this showed that majority is not always right. He believed that in democracy, people often choose leaders based on popularity rather than wisdom. A leader who makes exciting speeches may win elections even if they lack knowledge or good judgment. Plato compared governing a country to sailing a ship. Imagine a large ship caught in a storm. Would you let the passengers vote on who should steer the ship, or would you choose the most skilled captain? Most of us would choose the trained captain. Plato believed ruling a state should be the same. Government requires knowledge, experience, and wisdom, not just popularity. He also warned that excessive freedom could become dangerous. If every person only follows their own desires without discipline, society becomes chaotic. According to Plato, chaos eventually creates fear, and frightened people often choose a strong ruler who promises to restore order. This is how democracy can slowly turn into tyranny, where one cruel ruler gains complete control. However, it is important to understand that Plato was criticizing the democracy of ancient Athens, not every democratic system that exists today. Modern democracies include constitutions, independent courts, elections, and checks and balances that did not exist in Plato's time. Another controversial idea of Plato was censorship. He believed that education shapes a person's character. Therefore, children should not be exposed to stories, poems, music, or plays that encourage violence, dishonesty, greed, or immoral behavior. According to Plato, literature and art should inspire courage, self control, justice, and love for truth. And he even believed that poets who spread harmful ideas could be removed from his ideal state. Today, many people disagree with this idea because they believe freedom of speech and artistic freedom are essential in a democratic society. Still, Plato's main concern was protecting the moral development of citizens, especially children. Although Plato is one of history's greatest philosophers, many scholars have criticized his ideas. His own student, Aristotle, argued that Plato's ideal state was too unrealistic. He believed people naturally care more for things they personally own than for property shared by everyone. Aristotle argued that abolishing private families among the guardians would weaken natural love and responsibility between parents and children. Another famous critique was Karl Popper. In his famous book, The Open Society and Its Enemies, Popper claimed that Plato's ideal state gives too much power to rulers and too little freedom to ordinary citizens. Some scholars even describe Plato's ideal state as authoritarian because rulers control education, literature, and many aspects of people's life. Others argue that expecting rulers to remain completely unselfish is unrealistic because all human beings have personal desires. Despite these criticisms, even Plato's opponents agree on one thing: his questions remain as important today as they were over 2000 years ago. Plato's influence on the world is impossible to measure. His academy continued for centuries and became one of the earliest centers of higher learning. His student Aristotle shaped philosophy, science, and politics. Aristotle's student Alexander the Great spread Greek ideas across much of the known world. For over 2000 years, Plato's writings have influenced philosophers, political thinkers, educators, scientists, and even religious scholars. His ideas about justice, education, leadership, ethics, and knowledge continue to be discussed in universities across the world. That is why Plato is remembered as one of the founders of Western political philosophy. So, what can we learn from Plato today? Perhaps his greatest lesson is this: a good society is not created by wealth alone, it is not created by power alone, it is created by wisdom, justice, education, and moral character. Plato challenged us to question everything we believe. He reminded us that appearances can be misleading, that truth requires effort, and that real leadership is based on knowledge and responsibility, not fame or popularity. Whether we agree with all of his ideas or not, Plato changed the way humanity thinks about politics, philosophy, and the search for truth. More than 2400 years later, his questions still remain alive. What is justice? Who should rule? What is the purpose of education? And perhaps the biggest question of all: are we living in the light of truth, or are we still watching shadows on the wall? Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed this complete explanation of Plato, don't forget to like, subscribe, and join History Diaries for more easy to understand videos on Western political thought, history, and philosophy. See you in the next video.